on is right here.
Hey folks, David Glenn here from the North Carolina Sports Network with my three quick things on Alabama's 89-82 victory over number 6 seed Clemson in the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament. Regardless of who won this game, somebody was headed to the first Final Four in the history of their program, and that somebody turned out to be the Crimson Tide. Quick thing, number one, when Clemson beat Alabama 85-77 in Tuscaloosa back in November, the Crimson Tide simply couldn't stop the Tigers, who led for pretty much that entire game. Clemson shot better than 50% from the field and better than 50% from three-point land in that one, finishing 11 for 21 as a team from long range. This time, the Tigers, the best offensive team of Brad Brownell's 14 seasons and plenty entertaining to watch, again put up 80-plus points against Alabama, even while repeatedly trying to slow the game to their preferred pace against one of the highest tempo teams in the entire country. This Clemson team, though, was not quite as good defensively as many of Brad Brownell's teams of the past, and that ultimately came back to haunt the Tigers against an Alabama squad that, remember, was ranked among the top 5 in the entire nation in offensive efficiency. All SEC guard Mark Sears, the Tide's best player, overcame a very slow start to finish with a game-high 23 points. Clemson actually used 5 or 6 different guys to defend Sears, and they made his life especially difficult in the first half, to their credit, when he made only 2 of his 11 field goal attempts. Ultimately, though, truly great players usually do find a way, and Sears did. He hit 7 of his 14 three-point attempts overall, and 6 of his 7 second-half field goal attempts to help the Tide pull away from the Tigers. When Clemson beat the Tide back in November, Sears again was Alabama's best player, scoring 23 points. He just didn't get nearly enough help in that game. This time, he did. Senior forward Nick Pringle, who's actually from South Carolina, was in the starting lineup for Alabama only because of an injury to senior guard Latrell Wrightsell Jr. Pringle finished with 16 points and 11 rebounds in one of his best games of the season. Sophomore guard Rylan Griffin, who torched UNC from the perimeter in the Sweet 16, added 13 points and hit 3 of his 6 three-point attempts. Finally, a reserve freshman came off the bench to make a major contribution for the Tide. More on him in just a bit. It is a credit to the season-long progress of the Crimson Tide that within 3 days, they eliminated the most dominant defensive team in the ACC on a Thursday night, meaning North Carolina, then turned around and eliminated the second most efficient offensive team in the ACC on a Saturday night, meaning Clemson. In case you were wondering, Duke was number 1 offensively in the ACC this year. It's supposed to be hard to reach the Final Four, and the Crimson Tide earned everything they got during their run to the West Regional Championship in Los Angeles. King Neptune Restaurant in Wrightsville Beach is the longest-running restaurant in New Hanover County. That's since 1947, and it recently was renovated to an impeccable degree by our good friends Jimmy Galeese and his amazing wife, Keaton. Their outstanding chefs offer fresh local seafood, salad options, and creative, tasty variations of pork, beef, and poultry dishes. King Neptune has always been a great choice for dinner and/or drinks, and now it's open for lunch and brunch too. Check out the lunch, brunch, and dinner menus at neptuneswb.com. That's Neptunes with an S, then WB for Wrightsville Beach. Again, the King Neptune Restaurant website is neptuneswb.com. Quick thing number 2. Sometimes in a close game between 2 evenly matched teams, the best players sort of cancel each other out, and the team that wins is the one that gets a big performance from someone who's typically a role player. That absolutely did happen for Alabama in this Elite Eight win over Clemson. And some of the details behind that particular Crimson Tide role player and his huge, unexpected performance must have had the college basketball gods smirking just a little bit. Everyone here in ACC country knows about the so-called Clemson curse in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Even though Clemson and UNC were both founding members of the Atlantic Coast Conference way back in 1953, it took 67 years for the Tigers to post their first men's basketball victory in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, as crazy as that might sound. Remember, for many decades, when the ACC was a smaller league, the teams played a true round-robin conference schedule in men's basketball, meaning every team played every conference opponent, home and away, every single season. Although that round-robin format ended years ago, back in 2020, Clemson was 0 for 59, meaning 0 victories in 59 trips when the Tigers once again traveled to Chapel Hill. That is a stunning streak through many different players, many different coaches, even multiple generations. It was the longest losing streak by any single NCAA team to any single opponent in all of major college basketball. Then Clemson, under Brad Brownell, won 79-76 at the Smith Center in 2020. Although the world did not yet realize it in January of 2020, when the Tigers finally beat the Tar Heels in Chapel Hill, COVID was actually already lingering. And in retrospect, that seems symbolic somehow. It took a worldwide pandemic for Clemson to win a road game at UNC. For the record, remember, Clemson won in Chapel Hill this season under Brad Brownell too. Anyway, the surprise star of Alabama's win over Clemson was freshman forward Jaron Stevenson. Where is Stevenson from? You guessed it, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. You can't make this stuff up. The Elite Eight would seem an unlikely place for any off-the-bench player's college breakout game, but that's exactly what happened with Stevenson and what he delivered for the Crimson Tide against Clemson. The 6'11" freshman forward, a top 100 recruit who surprised and disappointed a lot of people in his native state when he signed with Alabama over hometown UNC and others. He scored a career-high 19 points on 7 for 11 shooting and hit 5 of his 8 three-point attempts after airballing his first one in this game to help the Tide pull away from the Tigers in the second half. Perhaps Clemson's Chapel Hill curse is still alive after all, just in a different and perhaps even more painful way. The original Saltworks has become a legendary breakfast, brunch, and lunch place in Wilmington for both locals and out-of-town visitors over the last 50-plus years. Our good friend Bob Hubbard owns the place, but he's also the one cooking your food and often roaming the dining room to greet you with a smile and to make sure your visit is a great one. Bob has been running the show at this unique roadside diner for more than 20 years now, and he and his friendly, hardworking staff aim to treat you like one of their own. Try Bob's homemade omelets or special recipe grits for breakfast or his legendary cheeseburgers for lunch. The original Saltworks, your breakfast and lunch choice on Oleander Drive in Wilmington. Quick thing number 3. It would be a miscarriage of justice to let Clemson's season end without a tribute to these Tigers as, and I am not exaggerating here, one of the greatest teams in program history. Hats off to that 14th-year coach, Brad Brownell, who did some special things as a head coach at UNC Wilmington and again at Wright State at the mid-major level before taking over at Clemson 14 years ago. I would argue that, including Brownell's 2018 Clemson team, which won 25 games and reached the Sweet 16. Tigers haven't been there very often either. And now these very special 2024 Tigers, I'd argue that Brad Brownell is personally responsible for 2 of the 5 greatest teams in the history of the Clemson men's basketball program. I realize it might not feel that way to disappointed Clemson fans right now, but consider the facts and the individuals involved beyond Coach Brownell. Senior forward P.J. Hall became just the 14th Clemson player in the 71-year history of the ACC to earn first-team all-conference honors, and deservedly so. 5th-year senior guard Joe Girard, who got on a roll against the Crimson Tide late that made that game really interesting, had the best season of his entire illustrious career with the Tigers this season. Look at his numbers in production and efficiency over 4 years under Hall of Fame coach Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, and you will see with crystal clarity that Clemson brought out the best in Joe Girard in 1 season to a degree that the Orange did not manage in 4 seasons. 5th-year senior point guard at Clemson, Chase Hunter, showed incredible resolve in bouncing back from late-season disappointments against Notre Dame and Boston College. Those were both relatively recently, to play some of the best ball of his entire college career at exactly the right time during this NCAA tournament. And he did it against some really good guards at New Mexico and at Baylor and against Arizona and, yes, against Alabama. Junior forward Ian Shefflin, that guy's a double cult hero at this point. Send me a chef's hat. I will be happy to wear one on a future show in his honor as well. Those 4 guys and their teammates, along with Brad Brownell and his staff, should be celebrated as one of the greatest teams in Clemson men's basketball history. They were only the 2nd Tigers team, remember, ever to reach the Elite 8, joining coach Bill Foster's squad way back in 1980. These Tigers won 24 games. These Tigers earned a number 6 seed, one of the highest in Clemson history in the NCAA tournament. These Tigers played smart, unselfish, team-first, offensively creative, and defensively intense basketball. They lost to a high-quality opponent in the end, a higher seed playing its best basketball of the season, and they fought all the way to the final buzzer. These Tigers will be rewarded with a postseason top 25 ranking, which has not happened often in the history of Clemson basketball. To me, you could argue about the order. We'll save that for another day. But the 5 best teams in Clemson history are that 1980 Elite 8 team of Bill Foster, the 1990 Cliff Ellis team. I covered that one with first-team All-ACC big men Eldon Campbell and Dale Davis. Those Tigers won the only regular season ACC title, meaning first-place finish, in the history of the program, and they made the Sweet 16. The 1997 Rick Barnes team is also on this short list. They had all ACC and tough as nails backcourt guys in Greg Buckner and Terrell McIntyre. Those Tigers won 23 games, also reached the Sweet 16, and they finished number 10 in one of the polls, which I believe is the highest postseason poll finish in program history. And then there are those 2 Brad Brownell teams I mentioned. Look them up. Celebrate them. The 2018 group that won 25 games and reached the Sweet 16, and now this 2024 bunch that fell just a few possessions short of what would have been the first Final Four trip in Clemson men's basketball history. It is always important to remember that of the 68 teams in the NCAA tournament every year, 67 go home with a loss in their last game played. Sometimes there's a lot worth celebrating, even in defeat. And for this Clemson team and some others, this is one of those times. I'm David Glenn. Thanks for joining us on the North Carolina Sports Network. Please find more of our work at ncsportsnetwork.com.
This is the moment we waited for. Everything you want is right here. We gon' give them what they came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Shoot 'em my shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling in.
If you are anywhere near Wilmington, North Carolina, and looking for a little live music, a cold beer, a tangy slushie, a fun crowd, or just a taste of the good life at the beach, Jimmy's Bar in Wrightsville Beach is the place for you. Located on North Lumina Avenue, just 1 block from the sand and waves of the Atlantic Ocean, Jimmy's features a full bar with nightly beer and drink specials, and it hosts musical performers almost every day of the year. One more fun fact, Jimmy's annual children's bike drive, which started in 2017, now distributes more than 1,000 bicycles and helmets per year to young people in the Wilmington area and beyond. Jimmy's Bar, your home away from home on Lumina Avenue in Wrightsville Beach.